What's up guys, welcome back to Sideboard Therapy. I'm Graham and today we're doing a deck tag breakdown of my personal Elenda of the Dusk Rose deck. Be sure to subscribe and drop a like on this video, it really helps out the channel. And without further ado, let's get into today's video. Alright, so let's talk about this deck strategy. At the core, it's an Aristocrat deck, so once you'd have creatures that you sacrifice to drain out your opponents. But it's kind of unique compared to other decks, as you can kind of pivot into a Voltron strategy with Elenda, or even go wide with tokens as kind of a backup option. So if we take a look here at Elenda, this one here is a Japanese foil, but Elenda is a 1/1 Vampire Knight with lifelink for 2 white black, and she says whenever another creature dies, that could be your creature, an opponent's creature, doesn't matter, she gets a +1/+1 counter, and then when Elenda dies, you create 1/1 vampire tokens with lifelink equal to her power. So why that's interesting is you can kind of grow Elenda to become a big threat on her own, or sacrifice her and then make a whole board full of tokens. So it kind of gives us a couple different angles to go after. So let's take a look at some of the pieces that kind of make up the game plan of this deck. Starting with the sacrifice outlets. This is very important. You never want to let Elenda get exiled if possible. If anyone goes to target her to remove her, you always want to try to sacrifice her. That way she dies and you get to create the tokens and kind of build up a board state. So right here we have a vampire. This is Yahenni, Undying Partisan. 2/2 haste. Whenever another creature an opponent controls dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on Yahenni. And Yahenni is a sack outlet that says sacrifice another creature. Yahenni gets indestructible to end a turn. So great to have an instant speed sack outlet right there. We also have Viscera, a classic 1/1 vampire, and then you just sacrifice a creature, scry 1. So another instant speed sack outlet, very important in this deck. We have Ashnod's Altar. This one, sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool at instant speed. Phyrexian Altar, sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool at instant speed. And then these last 2 here are lands, so they kind of add some utility in our land base, and they can only be activated once per turn, but each one you can tap to sacrifice a creature. Phyrexian Tower, you can add 2 black when you do that, or just tap it for a colorless. And then High Market, you can tap for a colorless, or you can tap, sacrifice a creature, and gain 1 life. So it's really good, if possible, to leave both of these open to have a outlet to sacrifice Elenda if needed, if she's trying to be removed. So next, let's take a look at some of the things that make tokens or things we might want to sacrifice. So Bloodghast is a creature that we can keep recurring from the graveyard every time a land enters the battlefield under our control. So this is a great target to sacrifice and kind of just bring back each turn. Prismatic Conqueror is a powerhouse in this deck. It's kind of a stacks piece. So it's a 2/2 vigilant vampire soldier for 2. And says whenever an artifact or a creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control untapped, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you create a 1/1 vampire token with lifelink. So the same token that Elenda makes, we just make some of this guy if they don't want other things enter tap, or maybe they slow themselves down instead. So it kind of helps us out either way, right? Pawn of Ulamog, this guy is a 3 mana 2/2. And whenever Pawn of Ulamog or another non-token creature is put into graveyard from the battlefield, you may make a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token. And then the spawns have sacrifice this creature, add 1 colorless to your mana pool. So not only are we getting more creatures on the board that can be sack fodder, this can also work as a little bit of mana ramp too. Preacher of the Schism is a 3-drop 2/4 with Death Touch. And this guy says whenever he attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink, so the same tokens that Elenda makes. And whenever the preacher attacks while you have the most life or tied for the most life, you get to draw a card and lose a life. So kind of a little bit of dual duty there. Maybe makes a token, maybe draws you a card. Elenda's Hierophant, is kind of like a mini version of Elenda. So this is a 1/1 with flying. And then whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then when it dies, you create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink where it's its power. So very similar to Elenda's ability, except this one is not creatures dying, but when you gain life. But because Elenda herself has lifelink and all the tokens we're creating that are vampires have lifelink, it's pretty easy to gain some life in this deck. Requiem Angel, while not being a vampire, is a great source of more tokens to have as sack fodder. So itself is a 5/5 flyer, and whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you put a 1/1 white spirit creature token onto the battlefield with flying. So it can be a good source of kind of like chump blockers. It can also be more things to sacrifice. And then Bloodline Keeper here is a 4-mana 3/3 flyer that lets us tap to make a 2/2 black vampire creature token with flying. But we can also pay a black and transform this creature if we control 5 or more vampires. And it kind of gives us like an Anthem effect. It turns into a 5/5 flyer, and other vampire creatures you control get +2/+2. So this can be really good if we are going for that kind of go wide backup plan with all our tokens and want to swing out. This will buff them all up to 3/3s. And then it still has the tap ability to make a 2/2 black vampire token with flying. So pretty good there. Let's take a look at some of the creatures that care about the Aristocrat strategy. So this is going to be the things that drain our opponents or maybe gain us life and drain them for life. So Blood Artist is a classic 2-drop 0/1 vampire. Whenever this creature or another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Zulaport Cutthroat, 2-drop for 1/1. Whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. We played Vito, Thorn of the Dusk Rose, 3 mana for 1/3 vampire. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So that can get pretty brutal. And it does have this activated ability for 5 mana here, where creatures you control get lifelink into turn. That's not really something we're ever going to use in this deck, considering most of our creatures we want to attack with are going to have lifelink anyways. And here we have Sir Conrad the Grim, or in this case, Golbez clad in darkness. But this says whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put in your graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Golbez deals 1 damage to each opponent. So every creature that's dying, which we want a lot of creatures to be dying when we're playing this deck, that's just more sources of damage to the opponent. Vein Ripper, this is a pretty expensive vampire for triple black and 3, 6/5 flying, but it has ward, sacrifice a creature, so it means they can't target it. Your opponents can't target it unless they sacrifice a creature, which would then fuel Elenda, so kind of nice. And whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So we have an instance where we just have a bunch of tokens on the board that we go to sacrifice, so we can just drain somebody out with this. Sanctum Seeker, 4 mana for a 3/4 Vampire Knight. Whenever a vampire you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So once again, if we're going for that kind of go wide strategy with all the tokens on the board, then we attack with them. It just goes ahead and drains everybody for each vampire attacking. Mirkwood Bats here. So this cares about our token generation. So mostly we're making those vampire tokens. We do have the spawn tokens, a few spirit tokens, maybe a treasure token. So anytime we're creating or sacrificing one of these tokens, it's going to drain all our opponents for 1. And then this enchantment, Bastion of Remembrance. When it enters, make a 1/1 human soldier, so just another token to sacrifice. And whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and gain a life. Alright, so these cards care about +1/+1 counters. So Cordial Vampire is double black for 1/1. Whenever Cordial Vampire or another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control, including Elenda, so it helps to kind of grow her over time. Blade of the Bloodchief is pretty much a perfect equipment for this deck. One of the best cards in the deck, probably. Whenever a creature dies, so any creature, put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. But if the equipped creature is a vampire, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on that creature instead. So with Elenda here, we would get 1 for Elenda, and then we get 2 more if the Blade of the Bloodchief is equipped to Elenda, because she has her own trigger, and then this also triggers when 1 creature dies. So with this equip, we get 3 counters for every creature that dies, and that can scale really, really fast to grow Elenda. We also have Mace of the Valiant. This is another equipment, a little bit more expensive for 3 mana and equip 3, but equipped creatures get +1/+1 for each charge counter on Mace of the Valor and has Vigilance. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, we put a charge counter on Mace of the Valor. So if we have this out on the board, it doesn't even have to be equipped. Let's just say it's on the board. Elenda is like maybe a 10/10. We sacrifice Elenda, make 10 tokens. They all enter and put 10 charge counters on this. Then if we bring Elenda back, maybe one of our reanimation effects, equip her, and then she's just that much bigger for the next time. And then here we are playing the Ozolith. This is a Lord of the Rings art for it. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith. Then at the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from the Ozolith onto target creature. So this is just a perfect way to store up counters that would be lost otherwise when Elenda dies, and then just put them right back onto the next turn, or when we move to combat even on that same turn. Next, let's take a look at some of our card draw that we're playing this deck. So we have Welcoming Vampire, 3 mana, 2/3 flyer. Whenever one or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Only triggers once per turn, but we have a lot of smaller other creatures. Our tokens are also small creatures, so this can be a good source of card draw. Deadly Dispute. So this is one of a couple instant speed card draws that are just one-time effects. So this lets us, as an additional cost, sacrifice an artifact or creature, typically be a creature, and then we get to draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. Village Rites, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. And Corrupted Conscription, same thing, sack a creature, draw 2 cards. Pact of the Serpent, this lets us choose a creature type, vampire in this instance. Target player draws X cards and loses X life, where X is the number of creatures they control of the chosen type. So typically, we're always going to use this for ourselves. Let's say we got a couple vampires out. Could be 5, could be 10, who knows. We target ourselves, we lose that much life, which we can easily gain back with all the lifelink we have, and then draw that many cards. In a rare case, I could see maybe someone else is playing a Kindred deck. Like let's say there's an Elves player, they have a bunch of Elves out. You could maybe target them to just finish their life total off. It's possible. Skull Clamp, a classic. Equipment, pay 1. Equipped creature gets +1, -1. When it dies, you draw 2 cards. So this is a great way to sack some of our tokens and then draw some more cards from them. The One Ring, I mean, hard to go wrong with the One Ring. This is a bracket 3 deck. You could easily take the 3 game changers out of this deck and just make it a bracket 2 deck. But most of my play group is in bracket 3, so why not have a really good source of card draw, and our lifelink kind of offsets the damage from the ring. And then here, this is a altar art of Trouble in Pairs that I have from Hummingbird Altars. Very cool guy, check him out. But this is just another great source of card draw. Whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 more creatures or casts 2 more spells in their turn, then you get to draw some cards too. And then Black Market Connections, a classic. This just lets you pay life, so you can pay life at the beginning of your main phase to create a treasure. You can pay 2 life to draw a card. You pay 3 to make a shapeshifter creature token, 3/2. So it kind of gives us something to sacrifice. It ramps us, it draws cards, pretty much everything we want, right? All right, so speaking of the other 2 game changers in the deck, we do play 2 tutors. It is Enlightened Tutor, which can help us find any artifact or enchantment revealed to the top of our library. So we have, a lot of really powerful equipment in this deck. There's Skull Clamp, there's Blade of the Blood Sheaf. We have some good enchantments, like Black Market Connections. There's a lot of good options of what we might want to search for. And then, of course, Vampire deck. We got to play Vampiric Tutor, right? So this lets you pay 2 life, search for a card, put it on top of your library. Some of the targeted removal that we play in this deck, we have a Generous Gift, just hits any permanent, including a land, destroys it, gives your opponent a 3/3 token, which, if we're lucky, they'll just chump block or something with that, and then we get to grow Elenda. Same with Stroke of Midnight. This destroys a target non-land permanent and then gives its controller a 1/1 human. So once again, giving somebody a token we're hoping is going to die, and then we get to grow Elenda. Anguish on Making. This doesn't give a token, but exiles a target non-land permanent. We lose 3, but having exile removal is really powerful. Same with Path to Exile. It's not gonna help us with creatures dying, but sometimes you just need to exile a really powerful creature an opponent controls, so I like that. Same with Swords. I mean, that's just a staple in any white deck, right? Exile a creature, they gain life. Fellow Profane. So this destroys target creature or planeswalker. It's an MDFC, so it's also land on the backside. A Deadly Rollick, just exile target creature if we control our commander for free. And this one, Sat's Will, it's 5 mana for an instant, kind of a lot. But it says, if you control your commander, you can choose both, or just choose one if you don't. Each opponent sacrifices a creature they control with the greatest power, so that can get around indestructible, which is nice. And then it says, or hexproof, and then it says, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards, then create X01 black throw creature tokens where X is the greatest power among creature cards exiled this way. So not only is this a graveyard hit card, maybe shut down the graveyard player, it also can create us a lot, or like a wide board of tokens that we can use as sack fodder, so I like that. 2 more fun cards in this deck is Teysa Karlov and Roaming Throne. So Teysa says that if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time, plus she gives tokens we control Vigilance and Lifelink. Now the Lifelink is redundant, but Vigilance is pretty nice, so we want to swing out with our army. And then, if a creature dies, maybe let's say we swing out with our 1/1s, somebody blocks something, it dies, well now we get a double trigger for Elenda and add 2 counters to it. Now Roaming Throne, of course, in a Kindred deck, which this is not a perfect Kindred deck, but there's enough vampires where I think it's worth it, especially with doubling up Elenda's trigger. So when this enters, we choose Vampire as the creature type, and then it doubles all the triggered abilities of vampires we control. And then it itself is a 4/4 with Ward 2. So here we have some more cards that are ramp. Pitiless Plunderer is a creature, but it says whenever another creature you control dies, you make a treasure token, so that can be really strong. This is a Dark Writ, so pay 1, add 3 at instant speed. Land tax isn't really ramp, but it kind of helps us stay up on our lands, make sure we don't fall behind. Soul Ring, classic, gotta have it. Arcane Signet, Dot Vessel. We do have the potential to draw a lot of cards in this deck, so I like the no max hand size. Felwar Stone, and a Talisman of Hierarchy. So something that is really unique about this deck is normally like a token deck, you wouldn't think you would run many board wipes, or you wouldn't want to run many board wipes. But with the way Elenda works, we can run a lot of these almost like one-sided board wipe effects that really benefit us. So for example, Slash the Ranks, 5 mana board wipe, sorcery, destroy all creatures and planeswalkers except for commanders. So this is something that works well in like a Voltron strategy. We can wipe the board, grow Elenda with a ton of +1/+1 counters when everything dies. Now the board's clear, and then just swing in, possibly take somebody out with commander damage, who knows. So we also play Single Combat, which is very similar for 5 mana. It says each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control and sacrifices the rest. Players can't cast creatures or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. So very similar, we choose Elenda most of the time, sack everything else, grow her power, we could attack in, potentially. Or, you know, maybe we want to sacrifice Elenda if she's already has a ton of counters and then just make a wide board of tokens and have an army, and then everybody else is just left with 1 creature on the board, and they can't play creatures or planeswalkers until our next turn. So that could be interesting as well. Tragic Arrogance, another 5 mana sorcery. For each creature, you choose among them permanents that player controls, an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker. Then each player sacrifices the rest of those non-land permanents. So this is a little bit different. It's not just creatures, it's kind of everything. So it can hurt us more too. But if somebody, let's say they're playing like an Enchantress style deck, or there's like a crazy artifact deck, this can kind of help cut all that down and get it back to a manageable board state. And then this is not really a board wipe, but it kind of is. Massacre Girl works really, really well in this deck with Elenda. So she is 5 mana for a 4/4 human assassin with menace. But when Massacre Girl enters a battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 till the end of turn. Whenever another creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1 until the end of turn. This works really, really well with Elenda though, because if Elenda has 2 power or more before we play Massacre Girl, the way her triggers will work is Massacre Girl will enter, let's say kill off some 1/1s, okay? All those creatures die, or even if just one creature dies, then Elenda gets a counter, so it grows, and it always stays ahead of Massacre Girl. So you have the death trigger, Elenda gets bigger, the next things die, and so on. So it will never catch up to Elenda, and you're just left with hopefully a giant commander and Massacre Girl, and the board cleared. All right, so here are a few cards that help us kind of protect ourselves or reanimate and bring back Elenda. So Flare of Fortitude says you can pay 4 for an instant, or you can sacrifice a non-token white creature rather than pay the spell's cost. Until end of turn, your life total can't change, and permanents you control get hexproof and indestructible. So this is kind of like a non-game changer version of Teferi's Protection. Not quite as strong, but I like that it has a free spell cost. And it also gives us a way to sacrifice Elenda if we just want to make a bunch of tokens. Gift of Immortality works really well with Elenda. So this is 3 for an enchantment aura, and says whenever an enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control, then return Gift of Immortality to the battlefield attached to that creature at the beginning of the next end step. So this sometimes could be one of those enchantments we might want to tutor for, but it lets us basically sacrifice Elenda when this is enchanted onto her. So let's say we have that attached there. And then we go sacrifice Elenda with one of our sack outlets, make a bunch of vampires equal to her power, and then we just bring her back to the battlefield again. And then at instead, this comes back again. So we can just do it all over again, right? So that works really well. Then Kaya's Ghost Form. I really like this card because it says enchant creature or planeswalker you control for just 1 black mana. And whenever that permanent dies or is exiled, you just return it to the battlefield under your control without this. So good protection. Fungal Fortitude is pretty much the same thing as Kaya's Ghost Form, but for 1 extra mana and as flash. It gives the enchanted creature +2/+0. And then whenever it dies, so it doesn't have exile protection, but whenever it dies, return to the battlefield under its owner's control tapped. And that extra +2/+0 does give you 2 more tokens from Elenda when she dies. Malika Rebirth is another MDFC, so this will land on the backside, but at instant speed for 1, you can pay 2 life, and then return a target creature to the battlefield tapped when it dies this turn. Supernatural Stamina, pretty much the same thing. Until end of turn, you get +2/+0, and then whenever that creature would die, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So, same idea. Victimize is a sorcery for 3, where we choose 2 creature cards in our graveyard and then sacrifice a creature, and then we get to return those creatures to the battlefield tapped. So maybe Elenda is really big and we want to sack her to make a bunch of tokens, and then we just bring her back right after we sack her, something like this, and we get 2 of our other big creatures out, like maybe we want the Requiem Angel or Vein Ripper or something, get those back to the yard, we can bring them back. Or maybe Elenda died and we put her in the yard rather than the command zone, which is typically what we always want to do. We don't want to pay that command tax, we just want to let her go to the yard, we'll bring her back. And then we could just sack one of our tokens and bring Elenda and something else back. Why not, right? Ascent from Avernus is triple white and X for a sorcery, but it says return all creatures and planeswalker cards mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, then exile it. So this in the late game can kind of just bring our whole board back, all of our creatures back. The highest mana value creature and highest mana value in the whole deck is 6. So for 9 mana, which could be a lot, but we have some ramp. We could use the, Phyrexian Altar, maybe the Ashnod's Altar to ramp up to that and just bring everything back from our graveyard for 9 mana total. Reanimate, pretty simple. 1 mana, put target card from the graveyard into the battlefield under your control, lose life equal to its mana cost. Great way to bring Elenda back. And then Carmen, 5 mana for a 2/2 flyer. This vampire says whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, which includes treasure tokens, a lot of those running around, or just any tokens that are being sacrificed, anyone else is sacrificing, you get a +1/+1 counter on Carmen, and you gain 1 life. Then whenever Carmen attacks, you return 1 target permanent card, mana value less than or equal to Carmen's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So I really like that Carmen's kind of another scaling threat, a little bit of life gain too, And it says target permanent card, mana value less than or equal to. So you can bring back fetch lands. You could, to kind of ramp yourself, you could bring back maybe one of your sack outlets like the Phyrexian Altar, maybe one of your creatures. You got options, so really, really good. So lastly here, we are going to look at the rest of the lands in the deck. So we saw the two sacrifice lands earlier. So that was the Phyrexian Tower and the High Market. We do run a total of 33 lands, 35 if you count the two MDFCs. So a little bit on the greedy side, but our mana curve is really not bad. We have a lot of 1-drops in this deck. Our highest converted mana cost is 6 in this deck. So I think with the ramp that we have, the land tax, and the card draw, it's really not too bad. This right here, Forbidden Orchard, is kind of a unique land to run for this deck. You might see this in like CEDH, and it taps to add 1 mana of any color, but the downside is whenever you tap it for mana, target opponent creates a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. And normally you wouldn't want to do that, but in this deck, we don't really care to give, opponent a creature because we want that creature to die to grow Elenda more. So they might use it as sack fodder or, chump blocker or something like that, and then we just get to grow Elenda. So we have a command tower, of course, in color, Godless Shrine, Volta Champion, so all these are dual colored lands, Cave of Koilos, Bleachbone Verge, Isolated Chapel, Reflecting Pool. I like this card a lot, especially in 2-color decks. I feel like it's pretty easy to get both your colors, so it's almost like another command tower. Shattered Sanctum, Shadowy Backstreet, Blight Climb Pathway. Barrow Downs is Bajuka Bog, so this is more graveyard hate. Dead Marsh is just Urborg, so this makes all of our lands swamps, so all of our plains or colorless utility lands can also tap for black. We're not running Cabal coffers, I just like that this kind of helps fix us. It does fix your opponents too, but I think it's nice to just have Pass of the Dead here, so this is Cavern of Souls. We can name Vampire to get Elenda out without it getting countered, or any of our other good vampires to keep them from being countered by that blue mage. Reliquary Tower, infinite hand size. Like I said, we have the potential to draw a lot of cards in this deck. I really like this. Hall of Heliod's Generosity. So this is a untapped land that taps for colors. You pay 1 white, tap it, and put target enchantment card from your graveyard on top of your library. So we have some really powerful enchantments, like maybe the Gift of Immortality. Might want to bring that back if we lose it, so that's a way to recur it. Here's some fetch lands. We got Marsh Flats, Prismatic Vista, Urza Saga, which can go find us the Ozolith. It can find us the Skull Clamp. It can get Soul Ring. So a lot of really good targets for the Urza Saga to go find. Pluto Delta, just some off-color fetches. Another one for black, another one for white with Windswept Heath. And then we have some Oil Slick basics. We are playing 6 plains and 4 swamps. So this gives us a good bit of basics to go find with our land tax. All right, so that is the deck for Elenda the Dusk Rose. Overall, this deck is really fun to play. It's very resilient. It has a couple different angles, so it kind of plays a little bit different every time, whether you're going for that core aristocrat game plan, or maybe you're like pivot a little bit to a Voltron strategy, or go wide with tokens. So that can make it kind of exciting to have these different angles to play each time. But, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if there's anything you would add. I think this is more of a straightforward build. It doesn't really run any infinite combos, but that would be an option to add in if you really wanted to power it up even more. Or maybe you want to lower the power level of it a little bit, take those game changers out, change it up. Kind of some good options. But check out the link in the description for our Mox Field if you want to check out the full deck list. And until next time, thank you for watching, and find us here at Sideboard Therapy.